Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Iheart America show with Dawn and Ella. Every week, we take you on compelling and thrilling journey featuring American legends, unsung heroes, and esteemed celebrities. Every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern and noon Pacific Standard Time, myself and my fellow co-host, best-selling author Donald Jeffries, will showcase incredible stories from fascinating people. Get the inside scoop from the most intriguing people on the planet. And I'm here today with a very special guest, Sally Kirkland. And of course, I have with me my co host, Donald Jeffries.
Oh,
Donald?
thanks, Stella. Sally Kirkland is I'm very thrilled to have made her acquaintance in a cyber sense here. She's got such a distinguished resume. I'm looking at the awards she's won. She was nominated for Academy Award in 1988. She won the Golden Globe Award in the Los Angeles Film Critics Association the same year. She's been nominated for more awards would take the show just to list the awards she's had. And her you look at her IMDb credits, and boy, it's amazing. And she's still working. She's still
Yeah.
active. And I was especially excited to meet her because knowing my background about the JFK assassination, she played Rose Jeremy in Oliver Stone's JFK. In fact, she's in the opening scene. So I was fortunate enough to interview her before. So Sally, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I love playing Rose Shirami. Oliver Stone, I called him up and I said, my mother was friends with Jack and Jackie Kennedy. I played Jackie Kennedy on stage off Broadway in New York. She came to see me. She loved my performance. I have to be in this movie. I have to. And he said, but Sally, it's all cast. There's no characters left. And I said, well, you'll figure it out. You'll write something for me. And some days went by and he called me up. I had known him socially from before. And he said, okay, there are three women who were assassinated because they knew that Kennedy was about to be assassinated. And one of them was a Chicago doctor whose name escapes me right now. The other was Dorothy Kilgallen, the journalist. And the third was, I always pronounce it Shirami. You're saying Jeremy.
Jeremy, it's Jeremy. You're thinking of, I think the guy you're talking about in Chicago was Irv Kupcinet. It was Karen Kupcinet, his daughter.
Yeah, Irv Kupcinet. Good for you, right.
Yeah.
But his daughter, I think.
Yes, Karen.
Karen Kupcinet.
Yes.
Interesting, because I was on his show. And Rose Jeremy, who worked for Jack Ruby as a stripper, drug runner, and just about everything. And so would you be willing to come to my office in Venice and improvise all three ladies just on the chance that we can come up with something? So I said, sure. And I went there with a white suit on to be the doctor. And then you take off the jacket and you have a very nice blouse to be Karen Kupcinet. And then you take off the blouse and the skirt, and I'm in a eeny-weeny bikini to be Rose Jeremy. And so I did the two ladies, and then it got to Rose, and he said, okay, now you're on drug withdrawal, and you're gonna be wheeled into a hospital and tell the authorities, the doctors, the press, that Kennedy's going to be killed. And so I improvised that, and the tears were streaming down my face. And Oliver Stone said, how did you do that? And I said, well, I've been acting since I was 17. I'm a method actor from the Actors Studio. That's what you learn how to do after all these years. And he was blown away. So he said, okay, I want you to play Rose Jeremy. And my staff will be faxing you. Back then it was fax machines. Faxing you all the material we can come up with on her. And do not tell anybody that you are going to do this movie, because I've already had many death threats. And everybody involved is going to be signing a contract saying that you will not talk about it. So I began to get all these faxes, amazing stuff on Rose Jeremy, and I was hired, of course, and he flew me to Dallas, and my scenes were a week apart, I think. One was where you see me thrown out of the car, the very opening. of the, well, they're both the opening, but you see me thrown out of the car and I'm screaming, "You fucking asshole!" And he wanted to have a stunt woman thrown out of the car. I said, "No, no, no. I want to be thrown out of the car. I'm a method actor." And wouldn't you know, there was blood streaming down my leg, and Oliver was freaking out. And I was thrilled that it was so realistic. And next thing you know, we shoot the other scene. I think it was a week apart. Meanwhile, he said, "What would you like to do while you're in Dallas?" And I said, "Would you take me to the one nightclub that Jack Ruby owned, and where Rose Shermy would have stripped?" And so I can't remember the name of it, but
the Carousel Club?
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I went there, and assuming that this was still happening, right? The carousel was still going in 1990 or something.
I don't know.
Well, if it wasn't the carousel, it was the closest thing to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked Oliver, who was with Kevin Costner, who I'd done Revenge with, if I could go up and talk to the strippers and see if they would let me strip on stage as part of my method acting preparation. And he thought it was great. Kevin thought it was great. I went upstairs or backstage to talk to the strippers, and they said, "Well, Miss Kirkland, we're so sorry, but you're not a member of the union." So I didn't get to strip. But I sat with Oliver and Kevin at the table while all the strippers came over with their big boobs hanging out, and Oliver and Kevin going crazy with delight. And that was my method exercise for Rose Shermy. Then we shot the scene where you see me coming into the hospital room with the press and the doctors. And Oliver said to me, "How would you like to shoot this?" I was, of course, blown away that Oliver was asking me how I would like to shoot it. Here he was, Oliver Stone. And I said, "Well, if you don't mind, would you shoot the rehearsal? I'm a theater-trained actor, and the crew and the cast are my audience, and I like to surprise everybody. If I do it twice, I won't be as impactful as if you get it the first time." So he said, "Okay." So there's a moment where I'm in the dressing room having heroin marks put all over my arms, and I get this walkie-talkie in my ear, and it's Oliver saying, "Sal, you ready?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, we're going right now." So I stopped with all the heroin marks and was driven over to where he was, walked in. He had the gurney all set up. I lay down on the gurney, and he instructed the crew to wheel me down the hospital, what do you call it, hallway, and into the hospital room where the actors playing the press and the doctors would be. And they were all told that it was going to be shot. Everyone was told it was going to be shot in, is it 6 or 8 millimeter?
I think it's 8 millimeter.
8 millimeter.
I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, 8, 16,
and
8, 35.
16. Yeah.
And black and white and color simultaneously. And so we start, and I'm screaming my lungs out going down the hallway on my drug withdrawal. And they wheel me into the hospital, and I don't remember my exact lines, but the gist of it was, "They're going to kill the president." And I've got this bandages all over my head, and the tears are streaming down my face. And everybody was in shock, and it was me doing sort of what I did in the audition, except in a hospital bed, with the bandages and all the people around the cast. And after it was over, Oliver said, "Incredible, perfect, that's it, that's all we need." So what you see in the movie was the shooting the rehearsal. There was no rehearsal. One take, and that was it. And it was incredible fun. If you get the biography Stone, there's at least 2 pages on what I just said.
I have a quick question. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I imagine this is a commonly asked question. How did you get into acting, and how old were you when you had your big break in the business?
I don't know about big break. I started acting at something called the Valley Drama Camp when I was 10. And then I was the president of the drama club in pre-high school and all through prep school. Because it was
Mm-hmm.
an all-girls school, both of them were all-girls schools, and I was 5'9". I played all men's characters, and that was good for me because I had this very powerful voice, which I got to be lower. And when I did Anna, for which I got, you said the Oscar nominations go. You forgot to say Independent Spirit Award.
Oh.
I talk like this. My name is Anna Dolkova. I come from Prague, Czechoslovakia. What you want? So I learned how to talk that way when I was a kid playing all the men. And I started acting for money when I was 17 and maybe 18. And I did a number of off-Broadway. I did Joe Papp, Shakespeare in the Park, played Helena in Midsummer Night's Dream when I was 18, and then did a series of off-Broadway plays. One was called The Loveness with James Earl Jones. In 1966, I played Jackie Kennedy, and Sam Waterston played Jack. In a play called Fits and Biscuit, Jackie Kennedy came to see me. She was blown away. She hugged me and told me how moved she was by my performance of her. Ironically, she didn't want, in real life, she didn't want Jack to be the president. She didn't want to share him with the world. So this play was about how she put a rope around her neck and tried to throw herself off the boat and drown herself before Jack stopped her. I don't know whether it happened that way, but I know it's true that she did not want him to be president. And then I did a play that made history. Maybe that's what you're talking about. In 1968, called Sweet Eros by Terrence McNally, where I was the first nude American theater actor. Before Hair, before O Calcutta. And that made the history books because no one had ever done that before. And the New York Times called me up and said something like, "Why are you doing this? You know, you're famous for doing Shakespeare in the Park and all of that." And I said, "Because I'm opposed to the Vietnam War, and you can't carry a gun on a naked body." That was my quote. And then shortly after that, I had my first starring role in a film called Coming Apart with Rip Torn in 1969, and simultaneously starred in an underground film called Coming Apart, where all Andy Warhol's actors were there: Ultraviolet, Tally Brown, Candy Darling. Sam Shepard made his debut. Abby Hoffman of the Chicago 7 was in it. And we were basically making fun of the establishment throughout the film. And then there was a film version of the play I starred in called Futz off-Broadway. And they all three came out in New York at the same time. So in the year 1969, my name was on 3 marquees in Times Square or in and around. So I would say that 69, 68, 69 was my breakthrough. And then shortly after that, Hollywood called, and I went to do The Sting and The Way We Were in Hollywood.
Did you receive, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to ask you, where did you receive your training? You're obviously a Stanislavski follower. You said you're a method actor, or you were. I don't know if you still are.
Of course.
So I'm just curious about that.
Well, I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts when I was 17, 18. I met a man named Paul Curtis from the American Mime Theater, and he taught me mime. And Alice Hermes was the best speech teacher in the country. She taught me standard English. Anna Sokoloff, a very famous modern dancer, taught me dancing. The only thing is, when they taught acting at the American Academy, which I went to because Grace Kelly and Anne Bancroft had gone there, they taught you how to indicate. They did not teach you method acting. The furthest thing from method acting. It was not truth. It was just indicating. So when I got out of there, I wanted to go to a teacher that would really go into depth with acting with me, and that became Uta Hagen, who wrote a famous book called Respect for Acting. And I played Sally Bowles and I'm a Camera for a year for her, over and over and over again. She said, Sally, people are going to tell you you're a dramatic actress, but I think you're a comedian. And she said, before she started working with me, she said, where did you learn to act with your eyes? Very few people know how to do that. And I said, oh, I learned from the American Mime Theater. And she said, because I know you didn't learn that from the American Academy. And so she was sort of method acting without calling it that. And I stayed there for a year, and I had a boyfriend named Gino Ardito who was in private classes with Lee Strasberg and Marilyn Monroe and all of that. And he did a scene with Marilyn, and he would come telling me all this stuff, and I was really jealous. And I said, you've got to get me into that class. And he said, I don't know, there's a waiting list months and months and months and months long. So I called up Lee Strasberg's secretary, Violet, and I said, look, I'm going to kill myself if Lee Strasberg doesn't take me in his class. And I was so convincing on the phone that Violet immediately set up a meeting with me and Lee Strasberg. And he said to me, look, I see that your background, you come from a socially prominent family. You're a debutante. You come from a family in Philadelphia where you're the granddaughter of mayors and judges and mayors and all this. Why do you want to be an actor when you can marry well, have kids, and have a beautiful life? And I said, I have to be an actor. I've been acting since I was 10. And I saw Ingrid Bergman play St. Joan, and I wanted to be her. I wanted to be Ingrid, and I wanted to be St. Joan. I have to act. I have to. And he said, well, okay, I'll let you audition. No, actually, it wasn't an audition. It was just an interview. And he said, I think you're way too young to do this, but I will take you in, and we'll see how it goes. So I didn't get into the class with Marilyn. That was on Tuesdays. I was put in a Thursday class. And in the class was Dustin Hoffman and Shirley Knight and Tina Louise and Tony Graham, who became Bill Graham of the Fillmore East, and others. And one of my first scenes, if not the first, I picked Dustin because I thought he was so intriguing looking to be my scene partner. And he said, okay, I'll do a scene with you, but it can't be, Tennessee Williams or anything like that. It's going to be a scene that my roommate, a playwright, wrote. I said, whatever you say. So he said, okay, come to my apartment on 76th Street, Central Park West, and we'll read through it. So I went there. He, at the time, was making a living playing piano for Danny Nagrin's jazz classes, dance classes. And there was a piano there. And we read it, and it was so funny. All I can say was I had such a tough time to keep from laughing. We both played nerds at trying to know what to do with each other socially. I think he was trying to ask me out, but he didn't know how. We were both complete klutzes, and it was one of the funniest scenes you've ever seen. We did it for Lee Strasberg and his class. Everybody in class was screaming, laughing, and Lee started laughing. Now, you have to understand, Lee Strasberg never laughs. He was the most serious man you've ever met and did 99.999% drama, never did comedy. So after the scene was over, Lee, chuckling, said, well, I don't normally encourage my actors to do comedy. We do drama here. But I have to say this is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And from now on, I will allow comedy in my class. And Dustin and I, 1964, both tried out for the Actors Studio. So did Al Pacino that year. And I did my scene with Keir Dullea from Space Odyssey from a book called, give me a second. Senior moment. Famous writer. Adventures in the Skin Trade, Dylan Thomas. And we both got in. And, of course, Al got in. Pacino got in. Dustin got in. I got in. Keir got in 1964. What was your question?
I think you answered it. You did.
Okay.
But okay, so this is something because I find it inspiring when I hear people's stories. What were some of the most difficult periods in your lifetime, either acting or personally, if you are comfortable sharing that? And how did you overcome them? Because that can be inspiring to people to know how people overcome any adversity or difficulty.
Sure. Well, the challenging thing about being a method actor and a dramatic actress is that when you play the high drama characters, you really get in there and do your truth and do what's called emotional recall. Sometimes you do as if, like a lot of times over the years I've been hired to play someone who kills someone, and of course that's not Sally Kirkland. So I do as if I saw a baby being slaughtered and killed right in front of me. All the as if sequences that you might do, were you to do that. But usually
Right.
I always worked with emotional recall because I had so many emotional experiences in my life. And when I did the play Fits and Biscuit with Sam Waterston playing Jackie, when she was trying to kill herself in this story, um, simultaneously I was having a love affair with Rip Torn, who had told me that he was legally separated from Geraldine Page, which ended up not being true. But men will be men. And it was my first big love of my life, Rip Torn,
Right.
1966. So when the moment came when he told me that, because he had told me he wanted to marry me, yada, yada, yada. And when the moment came where he told me that he could no longer see me, that he and Jerry were back together again, which is crazy because they had just had two twins, whatever. I didn't know all this backstory. And he sort of broke up with me. And I had a nervous breakdown. The combination of that, and we did the play, Fits and Biscuit, about Jackie and Jack. We started at the Actors Studio where Jackie saw it. Then we went to the Circle in the Square off Broadway in New York. And I had always, because so much of it was mime, I had always had stretch pants and a stretch top in order to do all the acrobatics we were doing. And when it started rehearsing in Circle in the Square, I had my stretch pants. And then right before the opening, Frank Casero, the director, said, "I want you to wear white duck pants." And I saw the writing on the wall. I wasn't going to be able to move in white duck pants. They were not stretch. And I said, "Oh, Frank, can I wear what I've been doing for 3 months?" And he said, "No, I want you to wear white all over, white duck pants." So sure enough, I get on stage. I sprain or turn my ankle very badly, can barely move. And when it comes to the part where the tears are streaming down my face, I couldn't emote. I couldn't do anything. I was in too much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the play depended on me being that emotional because that's what the play was about.
Mm-hmm.
So the play more or less didn't happen the way we worked it for 3 months. And afterwards, Frank said, "What happened to you, Sally?" And I said, "Well, you had me wear these pants. I couldn't move. I sprained my ankle, turned my ankle, whatever, in terrible pain, shock, and sorry about that." And the play closed in one night. And this is the first time I had my name on a marquee starring off Broadway. So everything happened at once. The ill-fated love affair, the play, and I had a nervous breakdown. Went to Payne Whitney and fantasized killing myself. Belonged to something called the Suicide Club, where we would meet for breakfast every morning, and one person would talk about taking rat poison, another person was going to jump out the window, another person was going to hang themselves, another person was going to overdose, etc. I think I thought I was going to overdose. And they would not let us out on an out pass without a nurse. Yeah, a nurse going with us. And
Right.
I knew that I had to do what I had to do alone. And so I talked to the doctor and putting on my best dramatic skills and comedic skills, I convinced him that I was fine, that I could go out on an outpass by myself, that I was completely well, and he bought it. So they let me out on an outpass. I went to the Church of the Resurrection on 74th and Park Avenue, or not, New York, where I had gone to school as a child, learned mathematics, English, everything in this church house. Went to Mass every day, and learned about Jesus Christ, who I fell in love with. And I'm sitting here in the church, knowing I want to kill myself that day, and talking to Jesus Christ, and I'm saying, if you exist, I need a miracle. And if you don't, I want off of the planet right now. I can't handle any more pain. And
I think we're coming up to a commercial. Maybe you can hold your thought. How close are we?
Yeah, we're like 30 seconds. We're going to hear the music in a minute. And Sally is feeling under the weather, so she's a real trooper for coming on.
No,
so
that's
just
okay. I said 40 minutes, didn't I?
Wonderfully.
Yeah.
So a couple of minutes
Wonderful.
before, we're going to let you promote what you're doing now and everything. So I
Yeah.
want to make sure you can get that in.
I just want to finish the story.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. So I am here with my co-host, Donald, and also Sally. And Sally is an award-winning and Oscar-nominated actress. And what we're discussing now is some of the difficulties she's had in her life and how she overcame it, more importantly. So Sally, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. So I can go longer on this show today, not to worry. I was at the church asking for a miracle. Then I went to my mother's house where she was leaving, she being the fashion editor of Life magazine, for fashion showings in Paris and London and Rome. And she always would take, when she did this every summer, a summer supply of sleeping pills. So I went into her bathroom, got a bottle of 60 Nebutol and a bottle of 50 codeine, and went to my bathroom and took them all and looked in the mirror and thought, wow, I'm free. And then I went up to the 13th floor of the building where I knew people were away for the summer, climbed out on the fire escape and sat on the 13th story ledge, waiting to get stoned enough to fall so I wouldn't feel the fall. And of course, as spirit would have it, a Czechoslovakian superintendent, father of 5, showed up looking out the window. Miss Kirkland, what are you doing? And suddenly my bubble burst, my bubble that I was in a kind of state of psychosis. And I didn't have the guts to jump in front of him with all of his family. So I allowed him to pull me in. I ran down the stairs, outside the building, up to the Guggenheim Museum in the corner, hid in the bushes, saw everybody running around the building looking for me, and remembered my friend Sandy on 84th Street and 5th or whatnot had a building with a bunch of garbage pails in the back, and I would simply go there and hide behind the garbage pails and die. And as much as I know of the story firsthand, I passed out at 1045th Avenue, Jackie Kennedy's building, right on the street, with a suicide note to rip, but with my first name, no last name, no ID. And the doormen just were laughing to themselves and carrying on, not caring about this woman passed out on the street. But a ship's doctor and a ship's priest on their outpass were on their way to the Guggenheim, saw me, and right away the doctor noticed that my heart had stopped, my lungs had stopped. He pronounced last rites, and the ship's doctor, I'm mixing it up. He pronounced me dead, and the ship's doctor did Catholic rites, last rites. Then I'm told by them that after they thought that in a last-ditch attempt, they would get me to this hospital in Harlem called the Metropolitan, where they had incredible amount of machinery that is for death and near-death experiences, more advanced than the other hospitals in New York. And so jump cut. Um, what I'm told is I can't tell the whole story. We'd be here all day, but the bottom line is that I was more or less brain dead, and my parents couldn't find me. They went to every hospital in New York. When they finally found me, the doctor said, "You better pray that she doesn't come out of this because she's brain dead, and she'll be a vegetable." And my best friend Betty Bennett had a dream that I was dying. Called Andre Gregory, who did the movie My Dinner with Andre, who had directed me, and said, "Where's Sally? I just dreamt she's dying or dead." And he said, "Well, no one's supposed to know, but she had a nervous breakdown, Payne Whitney. I don't know the rest." So Betty went to every hospital in New York, found me eventually. They said her parents will anyone see her. She waited till nighttime, climbed up the fire escape in the window, and persuaded the intern to let her in my room, and screamed and yelled at me, "You can't do this, Sally. I love you. Too many people love you. You can't do this." She's screaming and yelling. And cut to the chase in the morning, I open my eyes and I see everybody dressed in white, and I think I'm in heaven. And I think, wow, I did it. And then I notice the tubes in my throat, tracheotomy, and the tubes in my wrist and my ankles. And I think, oh, damn, I'm still here. And I can't talk. And the doctors say to me, "Who is Betty? You should thank her for your life." So I couldn't talk. So they gave me a pad and a pen, and I wrote, "She loved me more than anybody." And so I survived that, and that was my miracle. And years later, my spiritual teacher, John Roger, 50 years, I've been with him. He died recently, from the movement of spiritual awareness, where I became an ordained minister in 76. He told me that Christ, who we work with very closely, his soul was there with Jesus back in that lifetime. And Jesus Christ told him, "I'm going to assign you this woman named Sally to save and take home to God," meaning, spiritually do what I have to do to complete my karma this lifetime and go home to God. So that's what happened. He worked with me from 66 till I physically met him in 72. And that would have been the most difficult moment in my life.
Wow. I was just going to say, it's a fascinating, just reading Sally's posts on Facebook. I'm amazed by, all your connections. Your connections are just the names you've mentioned so far. I mean, being in, it's cool learning with Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino. And I know before you were involved with Bob Dylan, you had mentioned, and these names that we're just kind of in awe of out there.
I'm just beginning to write now, do recordings of my life of stories, just beginning now. I became Shelley Winter's kind of protege assistant.
Yes, Shelley Winters.
In the early 60s, and was with her right up until she died, where as a minister I did last rites and married her to her boyfriend, Jerry. And at some point in the 60s, she invited me to dinner with herself and Martin Luther King and Corinne.
Wow.
And I, of course, didn't say a word. I was in shock the whole time. But I had many, many moments like that.
Can I ask you one thing about Shelley Winters? I heard, and I include it in my book that's coming out next year called On Borrowed Fame, but I heard a legend that Shelley Winters hated to be alone, and I can relate to that. I hate to be alone myself so much that she would go to an all-night diner or something and invite waiters back to the house just to read scripts with her because she didn't want to be alone. Is there any truth to that?
I haven't heard it that way, but the place was called the Silver Spoon, which was in West Hollywood, and she introduced me to it when it was originally called Theodore's, and then it became the Silver Spoon. And all the actors and playwrights and directors and musicians would congregate there. And I read a lot of scripts with her and De Niro, who I brought to Shelley in 1968. And he and I had dated. And then I saw his film Greetings by Brian De Palma, and his play Glamour, Glory, and Gold, where he played 10 roles, and I'm sitting watching the play, and I don't recognize him in anything. He's got all these costumes on. And I realized the guy was a genius, and I went backstage and said, "You're going to be the hottest actor since Brando. And of course, he called me every day after that. We became fast friends. And I introduced him in '68 to Shelley, who right away saw his talent. He didn't speak a word back then. He was so shy. But she told Roger Corman that she wanted Bobby and me to be in Bloody Mama. And Roger thought that was a great idea. And the only problem was Gene Corman, his brother, had already cast Diane Varsi in my part. So Shelley and Bobby went on to do it. And I was being a yogi at that point. I had become Satya at the Integral Yoga Institute with Swami Satchidananda, teaching yoga for him and fasting all the time. And Bobby called me up one day and said, "You have to teach me how to fast because I'm playing a heroin addict and I want to get down to skin and bones." So I taught him how to fast, and he got down to skin and bones. And Shelley said that while they were filming, there was a scene where Bobby collapsed, and they couldn't get any rise out of him, and they really freaked out. And he had been fasting so much that he just probably fainted, And she and Roger really thought that he had died on them, which was a typical method acting trick. So anyway, I want to talk about some of the films I love that I did.
Yes, please.
I love I love working with Robert Redford in The Sting. He got me the job. I love working with Streisand in The Way We Were. She got me the job. I love being for a moment in Blazing Saddles, playing the what do you call it, checkout counter lady when Slim Pickens comes down the tray aisle with tuna fish all over his face, and I'm ringing him up as tuna surprise or whatnot. I love being in Cinderella Liberty for a moment, directed by Mark Rydell, and then on and on, many cameos in big studio films, and then a lot of television roles at Universal. They adopted me because of The Sting. Did a lot of Charlie's Angels, which fans managed to have seen more than my movies. And Beretta, and let's see, Charlie's Angels, Starsky and Hutch, Beretta. So many television films. If you go on Wikipedia, they're all mentioned. But I loved doing the film Coming Apart with Rip Torn, which I think is findable, which is my first time getting my name on the marquee in a film. Very emotional role where we both tore the scenery apart. And of course, we had history. And then I'm going to jump to the 80s and doing the film Anna, playing the Czechoslovakian actress who couldn't get arrested in New York, with Paulina Porskova, who taught me some Czech, and I taught her acting. And then I did a film I love called Best of the Best with Eric Roberts and James Earl Jones, which is a cult film for anyone who's ever loved martial arts. I play a taekwondo instructor and yoga master. And I love doing Cold Feet with Tom Waits and Keith Carradine and Jeff Bridges and Rip Torn and Bill Pullman. And you can find that probably on Amazon or one of those. Comedy, very sexy and funny. And then I love doing Revenge with Kevin Costner and Anthony Quinn. There's a little funny story with that. When I went in to audition for it with Tony Scott, the director, I was busy in my car learning all the lines, and I got there like 2 minutes too late, and Kevin had gone. And Tony said, "Oh, my God, too bad. You just missed Kevin Costner." And I said, "Oh, you got to get him back. I'm so sorry. I was in the car with all my lines." And he said, "Well, I'll call him." So he called him and said, "Kevin, Sally's here. Can you possibly come back?" And he said, "Tell her to be there at 1 o'clock tomorrow." So the next day I came, and I went through this whole litany of all of his films that I loved, Field of Dreams, No Way Out. I went on and on about how he was my hero. And he said, Sally, you don't remember me? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I was the stage manager at Raleigh Studios when Neil Young directed you and Dean Stockwell and Russ Tamblyn in Human Highway. And I learned a lot from you and Dennis Hopper and everybody. And I, of course, didn't remember, but I pretended I did. And I said, oh, my God, back in the early 80s. And he said, yeah, I learned from you guys. And I thought it would be good to have you in this movie so I could learn from you again. I mean, he was very humble. And that was a great experience for me, playing the rock star that hides him out from Anthony Quinn in Revenge.
He's such a kind person. You know, I was living in Los Angeles and I had the pleasure of meeting him. He's a very warm, down-to-earth person. He goes to Texas to go hunting. He's just a really, he's a warm person. He's very humble. And I know you said that he was a carpenter for a while on films too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was, oh, come on, Sally. Famous George Lucas star.
Harrison Ford?
Harrison Ford was the carpenter. I ran into him in West Hollywood where I live in the Holloway Cleaners. And I said, hi, how you doing? And he said, hi, I'm fine. And I didn't realize for a moment that I didn't know him at all, that he was a recognizable face in the movies. And I said, oh, my God, you're Harrison Ford. Thank you for your great acting. And he said, well, Sally, I consider myself a carpenter. I don't know how long this acting thing is going to last. Yeah.
And he had a long, illustrious career as well. And this is kind of going a little bit of a different direction. What are you passionate about that doesn't pertain to acting? Was there any causes that you really want people to know about that they should support?
Yeah. Well, the movement of spiritual inner awareness I've been involved with since 1973. You can find that on msia.org. And there's many moments of peace and something called Loving Each Day. All these things you get for free. And there's various seminars by John Roger and John Morton, my other teacher who took over for John Roger. And people who are looking for some kind of spiritual relaxation, calm, and peace, you will find it at msia.org. And then the Institute for Individual and World Peace, that's probably iwip.org. And then heartfelt services or heart reach, heartfelt foundation, where members of my church support people who come to them in need, a lot of illness, or people who are on the brink of dying or dying. And we do a lot of work with kids, particularly this time of year and Thanksgiving and Christmas and whatnot, bringing thousands of meals or whatnot.
Oh,
I don't know whether it's thousands or many hundreds, but you get the drift. And let's see. Well, I like to talk about my live stream, which you can follow. I don't even think you have to be a Facebook friend. I think you can just follow it every day at 4 o'clock to 4:30 Pacific time and 7 to 7:30 Eastern time. If you go to Sally Kirkland Facebook page, there I am. It says Reverend Sally Kirkland shares spirit. And a number of people who've been coming for 8 months, they now bring spiritual quotes and poems, and I read them, and so we all share each other's favorite spiritual quotes, and then I read from famous people like Thoreau and St. Francis and whatnot.
And it's great. I watch whenever I can, as you know.
Oh, thank you, Donald. And so that's my current ministry, is doing that. I'll do it at 4 o'clock today, 7 o'clock Eastern. And been doing that since May. And let's see, what else? I think that's what I can think of right now.
Yeah, it sounds like you've gotten through much of the hardships through your spiritual life and developing that and really focusing on spirit.
there's no way I could have been in this industry 61 years without my spiritual path. No way.
But I want to give you time with the time we have left to make sure, because you had the movie last year that you talked a lot about, and I haven't seen it because I think I don't know exactly where you have access to it. The movie Cuck, which sounded certainly
Cuck,
yeah,
C-U-C-K.
yes,
It's
yeah,
on Amazon Prime. It should be on
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. If not, then my bad. But I think you'll find it somewhere. It was critically acclaimed. It was compared to Joker, and I have an amazing role. I'm demonic as hell, but I have an amazing role. And there's another film, Cuck. Don't be confused. My leading man is Zachary Sherman, so it'll say Zachary Sherman and Sally Kirkland in Cuck. And then coming out this Thursday, Thanksgiving, and playing right through until January 9th, is a film I'm really proud of called Hope for the Holidays. And it will be on Amazon Prime, iTunes, Apple, Google Movies, YouTube Movies, everywhere except Netflix, everywhere. And it's a faith-based Christmas story, very touching. I play a mother who has cancer, and my son is desperately trying to pay my medical bills and ends up in jail. And then his friends in jail get him out in order that he gets to me by Christmas. And we have these heartbreaking, loving, beautiful, beautiful scenes together, mother and son. I don't have kids, but I really felt that George Stultz, who used to star in Seventh Heaven, was my son. And I Will Make You Cry, or My Name Isn't Sally Kirkland.
I'm looking forward to that. So Hope for the Holidays is coming up. So that's something that anybody can watch. People love to watch holiday films, and so
yeah,
that's
it's
a wonderful
beautiful
thing to
Christmas
contribute.
story. Beautiful.
And then you're writing a book, so we can
but
look
it's kind of premature to talk about that because what I'm doing now is I'm having 3 people come over with my recorder, and I just tell stories to them, and they're my audience. And I so far I've gone through 1960 to 69, I think.
Wow.
But I'm on the case, and I haven't gone through it all, but gone through a lot.
Well, your stories are so incredible. I don't know if you know John Barber. He's become a really great cyber friend of mine. He used to be the host of Real People, and he's been around Hollywood forever too. Well, he's older than you. He's like 87, but he just can tell, just hearing the stories of all the people he's known. That's why I love listening to these people you've known and interacted with and had relationships with. It's fascinating for people like Ella and I just to listen to it.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Well, I'm glad my brain still retains all of these memories. Yeah, I was talking in one session with the recorder the other day about hooking up with David O. Selznick when I was 17, Gone with the Wind, and he
You mean hooking up? You mean hooking up literally?
Not sexually,
okay.
but his son.
Oh,
okay. His son was Michael Walker, son of Jennifer Jones, and
yes,
Michael and I had been at the Spoleto Festival doing various plays as scholarship students, and Michael brought me back to New York and introduced me to David and Jennifer. And David said, I hear you're an incredible actress, and I want to help you. So he sent his memos. His first memo went to Francois Truffaut, asking if Truffaut would meet with me for Fahrenheit 451 for the part that in the book would have been the teenager. And I, of course, developed a kidney stone. I was so nervous. But I went in a lot of pain. Monsieur Truffaut, comment se dit, j'ai mal, je t'aime, on and on in my broken French. And he was charmed by me and then proceeded to tell me that Julie Christie was going to play the part of the woman in her 20s, and he was thinking of possibly incorporating the teenager into her part. And so it was crushing news for me to hear that my big chance with Truffaut was usurped by Julie Christie. But then he had me talking every week to William Paley, the head of CBS, who mentored me on the phone and got me some meetings and auditions. And then he wrote, or began to write, got halfway through a screenplay written for Jennifer and me, this older woman and younger woman. And unfortunately, he died before that got made.
Wow.
So I was talking about that the other day.
You have so many connect. I just want to make sure because aren't you working on something now? Because it looked like you were writing about it. I just wanted to make sure you can tell people whatever you want to tell them in the couple minutes we have left to promote anything else.
The main thing is I want you all to watch Hope for the Holidays, which will be playing all through the holidays into January. Let's see. I did some movies in between Cuck and now. They're all in post-production. One was called Lilith. One was called Bobby Moretti. These are all being edited. And another whose name I can't remember. And I'm about to do December 8th a short film called The Woman in the Room, based on Stephen King's short story, The Woman in the Room, and I'm the woman. And Stephen knows about it, and of course I'm anxious for him to see my work. And then in January I'll be doing an action film called Angel with a Gun. There's various actors in it that you know, I think, like Eric Roberts and Todd Bridges, do you know?
Sure,
and
from
others.
Yeah.
And in March I'll be doing a film, I think it's called Run, and the star is Alec Baldwin, and he has a series that goes through February, so we're kind of waiting to hear when he's available right after February to do that.
It's been such a pleasure to interview you. And thank you for your poignant story. That was very personal. Thank you for inspiring us. Dawn and I love you, and we also love our listeners. So
we absolutely
I hope everyone can join us next week at the same time.
And you know, I'm on SallyKirkland.com.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you.
Mondays,
and thanks.
Mondays from 10 to 11, I'm on healthylife.net. So do your thing. God bless you. Have a wonderful Monday.
Thanks for being.